David's not ready.
All right.
There we are.
I've made some mistakes, Matt, but I think we'll be okay.
Okay.
One, I forgot to post the show in the post game. I'm sorry, in the Patreon. And two, I think I accidentally have left this public. But you know what? I'm feeling a little given. I'll post it in the Patreon for our paying members, and we'll give some of the freeloaders a little preview for a minute, but then you're out here. You got to sign up.
Yeah, actually, so the freebies are here before
us. I know.
The freebies are here before the actual members are.
Yeah, we got to roll the red carpet out.
We can address them directly then and give them a hectoring message. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning, you freeloaders.
Yeah.
We're working our ass off over here, going through Aaron Brown's videos for Joe Rogan clips.
I know.
But yeah.
But seriously, folks, it does really help us do this, and you get to join the post game, which is a little bit more unstructured. We take calls and questions from the audience. But without further ado, we are joined.
This John Fitzgerald copying the Left Reckoning hat.
Ooh, we do love that, and you can get that at leftreckoning.com/store. I'm happy to see you rocking the hat, Matt. I feel like I haven't seen that on too much, so I'm happy to see it.
Yeah. And I lint rolled it too, so all the cat hair that the cats have been doing. So we're really
following the care instructions on the inside tag.
Exactly.
But without further ado, let's bring on our special guest for this Left Reckoning post game. None other than our good friend and comrade, joining us from the City of Angels, Dr. Professor Ben Burgis. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's been raining for the last 3 days straight, so I don't love that.
Oh no!
And they're not equipped for it here. But
I was going to say that the big LA River where they have the famous race in Greece is flowing with water in a way that never usually see.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's pretty brutal. I had to drop my parents off at the train station yesterday morning. And since then, the only times I've gone outside have been to take my dog out to pee. And there's a meme that I saw on Twitter that's like the two guys on the opposite ends of the bus, both like looking forlorn. And one of them is LA dogs having to go outside in the rain, and the other is LA dog owners having to take their dogs outside in the rain. But yeah, other than that, I'm good. It always feels good to have the mini reunion.
Oh yeah, we'll be in person sometime soon, but
yeah, very soon.
Behind the scenes. Ben, I mean, talking about reunions, we got some clips we'll get to in a second. Then we'll be taking people's calls and questions. But speaking of reunions, Ben, yes. I was alerted that you haven't heard this yet. And the context is bad, which of course it will be bad. Yes. But none other than the owner of Twitter.com, Elon Musk, who's been on one for a little while. Not just sort of pushing a lot of right-wing nonsense, but just like actually just doing straight up conspiracy theory crap. He retweeted a former, I must say, Ben, admirer of yours, none other than Amy Therese, which is a pretty incredible.
Former admirer of all of ours, actually.
That's true. I have DMs with Amy. I have DMs with Amy too.
Look, yeah. I think we've long since passed the point where I feel any need to keep this confidential. My first ever communication with Amy Therese was the night that I was on TMBS the first time. Not that I'd been on once for like a bonus episode, but like the first time I was on in studio, that night she sent me like essentially a fan letter over on like Twitter DM. She was like, I saw you on Michael Brooks' show, that was great, blah blah blah, right? And
You can't make all the fans happy.
yeah, exactly. Some of them ended up very unhappy.
Very unhappy. Well,
And some of them ended up in some pretty dark places. None darker than this one.
well, this one is really good. If we want to take a little bit of a view into the deranged mind, Elon Musk, obviously very smart guy, adding a lot to the conversation by quote tweeting Amy Therese message with "It was always the plan." And I wonder what the plan is. It's quote a pathway to citizenship for our nation's 11 million undocumented immigrants is the only way to maintain Democrats' electoral strength in the future. And this is from the Center for American Progress, a report on their blog, which anybody can go on the computer and look at. By the way, it's not a secret government document. This is a think tank. And this guy Philip, if you know,
we've all heard of.
Not even trying to roast him. It's just like, look, this guy wrote a report in 2013 on the blog of Center for American Progress, where he says the demography is destiny. The past, California; the present, Florida, Colorado, Nevada, Virginia; the future, near term, Arizona, North Carolina; the future, long term, Georgia and Texas. Now, it's very scary stuff, and you know the argument that Amy Therese and Big Brain Musk are getting into is that Joe Biden is trying to bring in illegal migrants into the United States of America so that he can win, I guess, the 2024 election or some elections after he's dead. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it must be elections after he's dead because otherwise I don't understand the thinking at all. But yeah, this is like, and it is really funny for anybody who's not familiar with the Amy Therese arc, which honestly, if you are, right, that's probably a bad sign. That means you spent too much of your life online. But I'm not exempting myself from that critique. But like for the longest time, right? So she had been, she was actually a co-host on the Dead Pundit Society.
Yep.
Like back when the main host, like Adam Proctor, was like friends with Michael Brooks and, telling him about Adolf Reed and, all this stuff. And so she had, from my perspective, she had like good politics back in like, 2018, early 2019. And then started somewhere in 2019, she slowly went crazier and crazier and crazier.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, she like disagreed with leftists about everything you could possibly disagree with them about, but it was always from some theoretical perspective of being more Marxist than that.
It was like, you know what it was? It was like it was a kind of, I don't know. I'm going to psychoanalyze here, but it's the Postgame.
Yeah.
It was like kind of like wanting to be Adolf Reed without doing the Adolf Reed arguments. Do you know what I mean? It was just like how like Adolf Reed could sort of piss off a certain kind of lib or leftist by saying, oh, this doesn't matter or this person doesn't matter or whatever. But the difference between Amy Therese and Adolf Reed is like Adolf Reed was coming to whatever position from like a very strong position of like argument, thought, and research versus just a kind of vibes of like and activism versus just a kind of vibes of like, yeah.
Sorry to cut in, but I remember I'm pretty sure this was Therese. Maybe it was another person that I generically lump in like a Therese type, but I'm pretty sure it's Therese's. Somebody challenged, actually might have been Red Scare, but shit. Anyway, but it's like, I challenge you to name one organizing opportunity you've ever publicized given your platform, right? Mm-hmm. It's always just like you said, like those sorts of arguments, but in a very very not grounded in any sort of movement or organization. Well,
and I mean, the funny thing too is that like Adolf Reed is somebody who is very enthusiastic about about labor organizing, who's somebody who's very enthusiastic about like left like electoral campaigns. He's somebody who's very pragmatic about, non-left electoral campaigns, right? Like his actual politics, are just very, whatever. From my perspective,
Oh, dude,
correct.
we love Adolf Reed here.
But I pretty much think that guy's right about everything. But even if you don't, right? His, I think you should just be able to call balls and strikes and say that that's like an overwhelmingly left political posture, and when he does criticize the left or other leftists, it's from the perspective of left values as he sees them, right? And so somebody like Therese, I think, sort of, in her dead pundits phase, I think she bought into a lot of those critiques, but I think what she really got off on was having like the leftoids yell at her and being based in response.
Adolf
being based is a hell of a drug, and that took her from the point where she spent years, after she had the, from my perspective, largely correct views, she drifted into this territory that I thought was pretty dumb, but it was all based on some theoretical, I'm the most Marxist person here thing. And then eventually she was just like, no, fuck it, I'm a conservative. And now actually the last time, I think she's the first person I ever blocked on Twitter, because I always used to just mute people, but but she was such an obsessive quote tweeter that people I did follow would interact with her and whatever. I was like, okay, hell with it, I'm just done. This is the only way I'm not going to see her in my timeline, which means that it's been very every time I see her Twitter, it's because I saw somebody posted a screenshot or something, and it makes me curious. So it's once every 9 months, maybe that happens. And it's she's installed a new software update since then and gotten way crazier. And the last time I looked at her Twitter feed, she seems pretty openly racist now. And worse than that tweet, racist. And,
we should probably address the content of those claims a little bit.
I was going to.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I think that on the thing itself, just the one thing I did want to say quickly is that, it's, above and beyond all the stupid shit that there's no, not the slightest evidence that there's some big wave of undocumented immigrants who are secretly voting or whatever. But I guess to be fair, what she said in the tweet was that you're going to bring them in and then legalize them and then vote, and then they're going to vote. And she's not wrong. CAP, right? Center for American Progress. That's, Neera Tanden's old job. That those kinds of liberals often have these demographics or destiny fantasies. But that's
because that's because they're not radical. It's because they're reliant on things besides politics to do the job for them. And so you get these demographics of destiny. Let's just be and fucking the Republicans at that time were possibly going to go along with it too, because they realized they also had a problem being so fucking nativist, and at that point there was an idea maybe the Democrats are just going to own this, but I would just suggest how about their GOP do something for these people then too.
Well, that's the crazy thing, because it's hold on, if the demographics change, why wouldn't you think that Republican messaging would change along with the demographics?
Texas is the counter argument right here. Texas is whites are not the majority in the state of Texas. Yeah. And the Republican Party is still dominant in the state of Texas, which just shows why the fucking demographics are destiny thing from the Democrats was so stupid when they were pushing it. Also just two.
Yeah.
I don't think we should even operate from this logic though, right? Because of what they're actually implying is way more outlandish than an argument about demographics or destiny. But it might be worth actually looking. The thing that pissed me off about Amy Therese is Australian.
Yes.
Right. So she doesn't know anything about America. Elon Musk is he doesn't understand anything about the state of Texas at all. And it's really crazy, actually, to listen to him talk about it, tweet about it, all this kind of stuff. Because, yeah, Texas is a state that has not been majority white for a while now. And we're not seeing, this massive shift. In fact, we're seeing Republicans increasing their majorities and gaining more and more votes amongst particularly the Hispanic Texans.
Well, the 2 points I'd make about this, one is one I saw Crystal Ball make this morning. She did a debate on her show with Sagra Jetty about the border stuff, that where she pointed out that there's this weird inconsistency with all of this, where on the one hand, Republicans are constantly bragging that they're cutting into these demographics, that actually they're making these big inroads, right, among non-white groups.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, they make this whole like conspiratorial argument that only makes sense if you think it's like permanently impossible that Mexican Americans will ever vote Republican. So it's like, come on, which one is it?
Yeah.
Well,
so,
I mean,
that's one thing, and then the other thing that's kind of along the same lines but much pettier. I was on a couple weeks ago. I was supposed to go on this show on Newsmax, and my segment ended up getting bumped by some breaking news thing. But so part of what we're going to talk about was the Texas border standoff. So a point I really wanted to make, because like the host had said something along those lines, basically like that Amy Therese tweet. It's like, hold on though, if you really believe that, then aren't you like actually? So his version of it was because undocumented immigrants are still counted in the census, so they're going to get like the blue states are going to get more congressional representation. And so the point I really wanted to make to him is like, all right, but if that's the plan, like, aren't you feeding into the evil plan with like by busing people to blue states?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's so, I mean, it's overused, but like this is the dehumanizing and the way it's talked about, like, oh, look at these. Yeah, it's always like Dave Rubin talk about it's all men. Like, first of all, it's fucking not. Like there's all sorts of people who aren't like young men that like might be able to kick your ass in a fight, but even the ones who can, like, they're not coming with like AR-15. Like they're coming with a desire to better themselves or to get away from something that was a worse situation.
No, they're coming with a dream of getting a job,
right,
and getting a paycheck. I mean, it's just like it's so wild. And to act like this is even like a politically interested, or I don't even mean this in a demeaning way.
Sure.
But like, if I couldn't imagine, if I were to be one of these people, entering the United States in this way, just like the conversations about my motives, right? Like all these wild ass things. It's like, I just want to like get a job in an apartment and maybe have a kid.
Right. Well, I do want to get into motives a little bit though, because like when Elon Musk is talking about this shit, and quote tweeting Amy Therese, what are the motives here? Is the motive because we're worried about labor, or is
that being worried about labor? I did just want to touch on that, right? Because there is a different version of the sort of right populist anti-immigrant argument that acknowledges what David just said. Like it acknowledges that, okay, overwhelmingly people are just trying to get by. They just want a job. Etc. But says, well, that's the problem because actually, unless you're like a border super hawk and like you're so, in fact, you're such a border super hawk, you're against this bill that's like that is already like a border hawk wish list. Then that means like this is, and what I'm about to say, this is an argument that's explicitly made in an op-ed that came out yesterday from Josh Hawley. It's also explicitly made in one from I don't know if you know this person. I guess she's like the opinion editor at Newsweek, Batya
Sargon.
Sargon, there you go. Yes.
Yep.
Not sure if she's related to the Akkad Sargons.
Of Akkad, yeah.
But they're both making this argument that actually you're like selling out like the native born working class unless you're like a border super hawk. Right. And because cheap labor, right? Like that's the argument like Sagar kept making in the thing with Crystal, that it's supply and demand, right? It's just going to bring down the price of labor, which makes me wonder why they don't encourage working class people to have smaller families, so there'll be less labor supply in the future. But
Exactly.
it's it just sort of, one, it's extremely disingenuous coming from all these people, right? I mean, that part probably obvious, but it's worth belaboring for like 10 seconds that, like, look, is Josh Hawley like a co-sponsor of the PRO Act, right? Is he, is he out there trying to, like even endorsing like a $15 minimum wage that, low wage workers started asking for like well over a decade ago, when $15 was worth a lot more than it is now? No, right? He's not doing any of that, right? Like, so if he actually cared about wages, there are much more direct ways to prop them up than rounding up and deporting families and hoping that that'll have a trickle down effect on
the capitalists will start paying more after that.
On wage levels. And it's like, second, like, look, okay, sure. It's, it is often true that capitalists want to employ people who they think will accept like are more desperate, they think will accept lower wages, but like, why solve that by trying to like hunt down, deport, and further immiserate like the worst off segment of the working class? Like, why not try to solve that problem by, doing that hated, pathway to citizenship that Amy was talking about, so people can come out of the shadows and they can organize labor unions. Their labor won't be so cheap anymore.
They're talking. It's complete bullshit, and it suits Amy and her downfall that she's being quoted in this fashion, because that Elon Musk, like, they like that there is a certain part, the capitalists like this sort of policing and this sort of bifurcation from legal and non-legal of labor, because let's say all these different organizations that are employing immigrant 15-year-olds to clean out their slaughterhouse machinery at 3 a.m. They like that kid's family being illegal, because if that kid doesn't show up for a shift at 3 a.m. in the morning, then all of a sudden you can make a phone call for ICE. Because guess what? None of this enforcement that Elon wants to do, or Trump, none of it was ever putting the capitalist who is using undocumented people to get around to save money on labor. None of those people have ever been made an example of, because that's not the point. The point is actually to work for those people.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, I think that talking about people's brains turning to goo, I mean, Elon Musk has been sort of watching people go from praising him and thinking that he's great for making electric cars, to challenging him. So he is just like, and I think he recognizes, like, he's anti-leftist in the sense he was always anti-socialist and all this other kind of stuff. But I mean, I think that he very much is worried, for example, about like Tesla unionizing, and he wants the political environment to be why did he move his company from California to Texas? It was because he didn't want to have to deal with the state coming in and saying, hey, you have to protect your workers. You can't just force people to work during a national pandemic. He doesn't want pesky government agencies to be like, hey, why are people getting injured or maybe dying building or working in your factories? So he has a vested interest in the right wing that I think goes beyond even talking about like what his position on immigration is. I think he wants like the right wing to be in power. And just like on this really quick, not to belabor this, but if you're curious about the other things that Amy's into, this is where I'll become a little jingoistic. Let me see.
Well, I was about to say, right? Like, I don't want to sound too much like a national chauvinist here, but like, come on. I don't think Amy Therese would be able to tell you where either California or Texas was on a map, because I genuinely believe that this woman's knowledge of America and American politics is 100% derived from Twitter.
Well, this is and this is the same thing. We've done this segment before on this specific argument, Matt, on this Arizona thing that the right picked up out of nowhere. But this is exactly the kind of thing that happens when you don't know anything about American politics, be you Elon Musk or Amy Therese. And there's this whole argument here that Arizona is basically the bastion of allowing illegal migrants to vote in the United States of America. Which, if you know anything about American politics,
Arizona, notoriously a state with very humane and welcoming policies about immigration.
And
I
the
mean, it's
argument
crazy
here
because maybe
so-
that's why it's so bad, because it's the last place you would expect it. Look at what they're doing, according to this Australian psychopath.
Okay, but like, just to be absolutely clear here, let me see, what's the best way to make this larger for folks. Amy is saying, when you register to vote in Arizona, you are supposed to provide proof of citizenship. But if you don't, you can still vote in federal elections. So illegals can register to vote in federal elections, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop them. So first of all, voting illegally is illegal. And there are plenty of examples of people being prosecuted for doing so. The thing is that most people understand how dangerous it is. So the amounts of cases on this are very, very low, because most people don't give a shit, just like most Americans don't give a shit about who the president is, to risk going to jail in order to vote. Now, what's notable here, though, again, is like, as we just said, if you know anything about American politics, you know that Arizona is a state that has been engulfed in a fight to make it as difficult to vote as fucking possible. The problem is that you can't prevent people from voting in federal elections just because you want to pass a bunch of psycho laws in your state. So the reason that people who can't,
like a poll tax or something, maybe
Yes,
an American
exactly.
might be familiar with some of these case studies from history.
So the reason that in Arizona you might not be able to pass the muster, which is an egregious example of like ID verification BS in Arizona. If you can't get through that, Arizona can't. Because have you ever been in a situation where you don't have an ID, you've lost your ID? Hell, we all know the kind of other kind of difficulties that people have with that kind of thing. Look, there's a million reasons. Hell, I have friends and family here in Texas who's like the registrar misspelled their name on their voter registration, which meant that they were unable to vote in a cycle, right? All kinds of shit happens, but they can't prevent you from voting in federal election. So what happened in Arizona is not that Arizona has gone woke. And is now allowing all
They've
these
replaced
people
us.
to vote.
They've replaced us.
Allowing all these people to replace us. It's actually that what's happening in Arizona is so egregious that the federal government is saying, hey, you got to allow people to vote. You can't not do that. And anyways, if you knew anything about American politics, you would know that. But Musk and Amy are two people who are very worked up about things. I don't know.
Or if you went to
There's
Arizona
something very funny
Secretary
to
of
me about
State-
somebody who doesn't know what's going on and is really worked up about it. Like, I knew a kid in high school, not to date myself too, I should, the other way around. I knew a kid in high school. I graduated high school in 2011. I knew a kid in high school who was very worked up about Y2K. Like in my junior year. And for people who don't know, our younger audience might not even know what that was. That was like a theory that when the year went from 1999 to 2000, that all the computers were going to break down because of the date. It was going from nines to zeros. I knew a kid who was really fucking worked up about the Y2K. Like, he knew all the shit that was bad that might happen, right? That was what worried about him. But he didn't understand what was going on. And I've always found that very funny. And that's very much like a Musk, if we're calling these people not cynical or sinister, just morons, right? That's how they're interacting. They have no idea what's going on, and they're getting really worked up about it.
Arizona Secretary of State, to register to vote in Arizona, you must meet the following qualifications: a United States citizen, a resident of Arizona, 18 years of age, and you cannot register to vote in Arizona. It says you must provide proof of citizenship to be eligible to vote a full ballot. So yeah, like you're saying.
Oh yeah, no, and sorry, you're right, Matt. That's a good point. Is that like the problem in Arizona actually is less even about all of your verification. Is that you have to prove that you're a resident of Arizona, right? Which in America you're allowed to move from New Mexico to Arizona. And Arizona wants to have strict rules about who can vote in the state of Arizona
because they don't
for the
want
state and local elections. Yeah,
and look, it's somewhat to do with the Nazi Great Replacement thing. It's also because they don't want kids that go to University of Arizona from California to be fucking voting either.
Yeah. That's definitely also a factor. I mean, look, it's also. I mean, I guess it's like a little bit funny, the whole conversation, because. I am on record as, like I wrote a Jackman article about this in November 2020. I actually think that you should let people vote if they aren't citizens. That my position is that if you live in a place,
Right.
you should get to vote there. It should be like, it should, like, the bar should be set where, like, getting a library card is, right? Like,
Yeah.
you prove you live there, that's that.
Did you see Stav on Rogan?
I saw that he was on there, and I think I saw like one or two clips, but I certainly didn't watch the whole thing.
So Rogan was all aboard on they're bringing these migrants into the gymnasiums to try to replace people, to try to get votes. And it's like, but the premise of this is they're upsetting their black voters, Joe. Like they're upsetting voters to get votes from people who can't vote. It doesn't make sense. And Stav's there, and he's like, yeah, my dad like can't vote. But the thing is like, and then Joe's like, well, actually some places some people are responding like, well, in some places they want to let those people vote. And then you look at it and it's like, okay, in San Francisco, they said, maybe we'll let parents of undocumented parents vote in school board elections. Like, yeah, how about the people who are already part of our fucking society, who only aren't citizens because of racial paranoia? How about we let them like exercise a little bit of a say in the structures that are governing their lives already anyway?
Yeah, I mean, exactly right. I mean, my position is that everybody who lives under a structure should have that say in determining, what goes on. I mean, frankly, I think you could be a foreign exchange student, you could be like whatever, right? None of that, none of that should matter. And I don't. I just think that's like the most straightforward principle position. And I don't really get like all of the. It's like back in 2016 when people freaked out about Bernie saying that people should be able to vote while they're in prison, and that was like treated as
I think they should be able to run for president from prison.
Yeah,
come a long way. Yeah,
that is actually literally my position. I don't think Trump should be taken off the ballot, but I do think that he should be put in prison. So if he wants to run for Debs, go for it.
Oh man. Well, sometimes it's nice, when you think of a friend from the past and you wonder how they're doing, and you're happy to go on Facebook and you see, oh man, they got a nice wife and kids and seem to be doing well. And sometimes you see them doing race conspiracy theories and getting tweeted by Elon Musk. So
I believe, if I'm remembering right, I mean, I'm sure it's not the last time she tweeted about me, but the last time there was a tweet from Amy Therese about me that I saw was because when Tucker Carlson had lost his show on Fox, and I wrote an article for Jackman. I think it was called "Tucker Carlson is a pseudo-populist fraud," and I think she said, she used some phrase like bio-Leninism, but the idea was that I was.
Which, by the way, I'm sorry, Ben, that's such a bad dig for you. Not even the bio-Leninism specifically, but any kind of fucking neologism, like politics like that. It's like anti-Burgess inherently.
Yeah, very much so. But yeah, she. The gist of it was that because I'm ugly, I'm jealous of how handsome and charismatic Tucker Carlson is. So that's the Amy Therese position.
Tough words from somebody who we still can't see their face. Just saying, not to be petty, but
no. The meanest thing I could say about Amy Therese is to direct people to. I don't know if you guys remember the podcast Grub Stakers, which used to look at rich people and like how they got their riches. And I would direct people to Amy Therese's appearance on Grub Stakers of Rupert Murdoch if you want to see the least value added to any podcast by any guest in the history of this medium. And you'll know exactly what I mean if that's still online.
Oh man. Well, where should we go next, friends? We got some video here. Do you want to do some video, Matt? Or
let's do some science, shall we?
What kind of science? Are we about to do my favorite kind of science? The racial one?
Yeah, race science.
I've been going back and watching the first couple of seasons of 30 Rock, and so I've like what comes automatically to my head is Dr. Spaceman saying science is whatever you want it to be.
Wait, sorry, not to take away from our intro here, but Ben, I actually genuinely have to ask you a question.
Sure.
Because I know we like to laugh at these guys and, we give them an argument, all that stuff. But do you think shit is getting worse? Because, I mean, like, not just politically, I mean, with the right. Because obviously people got really worried when Trump got elected, and that was, frightening, and I understand all that kind of stuff. But I mean, right now we're doing like race science is back in favor, invasion rhetoric going on across the right wing. I mean, hell, not that I care too much about 100%. Not that I care too much about Charlie Kirk's kind of pseudo MLK celebrations. But now Charlie Kirk is saying that MLK was like a thug or whatever the hell he said recently. You know what I mean? Like the right's not even doing the pretend like, oh, MLK was one of us. I mean, do you think that things are getting worse?
Yeah, I do definitely think that a big segment of the right has gotten. Look, I think that there's a certain, audience capture can do strange things in a lot of directions, and and I think there is a certain segment of the right that is has tried to seek out more based positions as they understand it, and it's led them to some pretty weird, pretty ugly places, right? I mean, I saw the Charlie Kirk thing. I mean, in general, like I had, look, I did a debate with Charlie Kirk, like, I don't know, it wasn't that long ago, it was a couple of years ago, and like 2.5 years ago, maybe. And, he was just saying like normie conservative things then. Like he was, he obviously liked Trump and all that, but like it's, but he just seemed like, a totally standard conservative. In fact, I thought that was one of the things that, made that debate go well, that it's like, if you've interacted with conservatives, you knew everything he was going to say 2 minutes before he said it. But like, yeah, I mean, I've seen him say the craziest shit lately. Like, I mean, that MLK thing is a good example, right? But like, there have been plenty of others. I've seen, certainly much more blatant racism from a lot of right wingers. Like I saw like Jack Prsobiec. Okay. Like I saw him like tweet this thing that was like, it was about like a story about like a couple on a plane, and they were like, a guy was upset that his pregnant wife had to like clean up after, their daughter instead of like the flight attendant doing it or whatever. But like, the point is, he was like their daughter. And it was like a picture of it's like a multiracial family. The daughter was obviously adopted, but like, it was like just this was like the kind of thing that you would think of as like on like a white supremacist message board or something, not that long ago, not from, a pretty prominent, like online kind of conservative. And yeah, I mean, I think even like, I don't know, it's like, there's been, like Tucker Carlson. I mean, I think probably since he left Fox, like he's gone
wild.
Like I like even when he's, even when he's like, I guess, sort of arguing for, a place where I suppose I like his conclusion better than the person he's arguing with, but like, he just does it in the creepiest possible way. Like I saw, there's this whole exchange essentially between him and Ben Shapiro, where they didn't talk to each other, but they were dunking on each other in interviews, and he and it was about like Israel, and Carlson was like being somewhat critical of all the Israel stuff on America First kind of grounds, and but like there was a point in that at the clip I saw of it where he was like, well, as somebody who cares about this country and his family has lived here for many generations, is like that. This actually feels like, I would never ever say this with regard to any conversation about Israel. It's like, this actually feels anti-Semitic to me. That he's like, oh, he like cares about the United States more than Ben Shapiro does because his family has lived there for generations.
Both him and I think that's how Crowder navigated the early response to October 7th was, hey, you guys, meaning Jews, have been pushing DEI on us, and don't you regret it? I feel like even Dave Rubin did a little bit of that, and it's interesting. Like also Candace Owens, basically downstream of Charlie, very bold. I mean, had Norman Finkelstein on for an
I
hour-long
saw.
conversation, and both her and Michaela Peterson, also who had Finkelstein on, both have sort of they've been quiet a little bit on the Palestine solidarity front since the Christmas.
Well, I mean,
break.
that creates a real problem for them, right? Because it's
Yeah.
I don't know if they appreciate it, but
yeah. But anyways, I know I took us on a massive segue because we were setting up our opportunity to go visit our boys, who are doing some interesting things, looking at skulls and genetic patterns and sex. So what's going on in the latest studies in the just what it is to be a human being? That's real nuts and bolts.
yeah, Tucker Carlson's been busy. I mean, he has Vladimir Putin on, I guess, coming up soon. Which I'm surprised he's able to squeeze Vladimir in between Dennis Quaid and Cat Turd. Who have been his recent guests, but you got to ramp up for the year. It hasn't been a year yet since he's been on Twitter.
Well, since we have been talking about the right wing getting crazier, and they have. But I do, just for the sake of equal time, I do want to just make one comment about that Putin interview, which is I've seen an awful lot of people in mainstream media today online who seem to have suddenly discovered this principle that it's really bad to give a softball interview to a war criminal.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Is like, I mean, honestly,
I'd like them to apply that principle.
Yeah, it's like, look, we all know what Tucker is. I'm curious to see that, and I'm not expecting to do anything but disgrace him. But let's get that. But again, but it is, I was curious because I had been noticing him failing to tread water with some of his recent guests, and it's not quite a year yet of him on Twitter, and so you need something for when the anniversary announcement hits. It's like, when people look up what is he doing now, it's like, oh shit, I had fucking Brett Weinstein on talk about Chinese invasion, yellow peril, reproduction.
I wonder, as you say that, if it's possible that he knew that he could get Putin on for like a year, but now he's like just desperate enough. He's like, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah.
Let's call it in. Yeah. I think he waited too long, honestly. I think he probably should have uncorked that one a little bit earlier.
In September.
He got turned on. But yeah, so a guy who was briefly a professor, Brett Weinstein, who has 2 papers published.
He's a big fan of yours.
Who tried to get me fired from the Majority Report, called me a drunk pilot for... I mean, we did a whole video on that. You can go look it up. I think it's kind of aged pretty well following his sort of subsequent foray.
This was the first. This was like the first interview that I ever did with anybody on my show, right? Like, guest number 1, Matt Leck.
That's right.
For like the first 20 minutes of the show, I think we talked about this.
Yeah, he called me a drunk pilot for saying that he had some guy in like the Homeland Security or something that was giving him inside information. Then he was upset that I said he was a member of DHS. Like, it was very, very ridiculous.
Yeah, because he said this thing that was like bullshit to puff himself up about like these conversations he was having with the DHS about what they were doing and the advice he was giving them, and you were like, wow, you want to tell us more about your consulting work with these people while they're doing this shit?
And he's like, he said I'm consulting. It's like, bro, I included a video clip of what I'm referring to, and he posted a image still of that, being like, look at anyway. So yeah, but he has only 2 papers published. And look, I think there's a problem in academia. I think, Ben, you can probably test this, where too much of the metric of like how much do you have published is looked at by bureaucracy, right? But
sure,
I don't think Brett is really that established in the field that he left to go become a full-time YouTuber. But anyway, he's done this a couple times. Go ahead.
Had to be, because he was like a I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I guess I don't know, but I mean, he was a professor at this like weird hippie college that, is, I'm guessing was probably not too uptight about that.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, but yeah. And then, by the way, I really wish that the student protesters in Evergreen had left him alone, because if they had, none of us would know his name.
It wouldn't have been a great launch pad, including Tucker Carlson, which was one of the first mainstream formats he appeared on. But anyway, he's on back with Tucker in what's called the Tucker Carlson encounter, which I gotta say sounds like the type of reason he gets fired from Fox News to avoid a lawsuit. Like the Tucker Carlson, that is a okay, man. Sure, I guess we're calling it that because you're in the woods now or something. But yeah,
is he supposed to be in Maine? Where's he supposed to be? Anyway,
he's in
let's
Maine.
get to this clip. Let's get this clip.
Here we go.
I wrote an essay years ago about the one-child policy and the paradox of a heavy bias in favor of males. No matter how different males and females are in their maximum reproductive capacity, they tend to default to 1-to-1. If you have a society that has too many females, you should produce a male. And if you have a society with too many males, you should produce a female, which tends to balance these things out. That logic should have applied to China. The fact is there were lots of excess males. And if you put yourself in the mindset of a Chinese person having a child, if there are too many males, you should want to produce a female. A male is very unlikely to find a mate. A female is certain to find one. And what's more, she has her pick of the litter.
Yes.
So that logic should have caused...
Everything you're saying right now makes perfect sense to me, buddy.
With you so far.
All right, sorry.
The sex ratio to return to 50-50, and yet it did not, which caused me all those years ago when I wrote this piece to wonder if there wasn't another evolutionary force in play. If evolution did not have a mechanism for producing armies, that when a country was in a position to expand, that producing excess males does pay off at a lineage level, that excess males who have no reproductive prospects at home become an effective weapon against neighboring populations. So I can't believe that did not occur to me as I was preparing for this trip, but it has occurred to me now.
Wow, man.
I guess it didn't occur to me because when I wrote that all those years ago, I was expecting to see evidence that this was turning into a military force, and I didn't see it. So I stopped thinking about it. But now I wonder if that isn't exactly right, and if what happened is that a male-biased population in China was produced as a weapon, and if that weapon is now being deployed.
That's remarkable.
I'm sorry, not to take away from
I just want to
Tucker.
start with some credit where credit's due. That Tucker has actually improved his interview style, because at some point since the last time I saw him, he's learned to close his mouth while his guest speaks.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder how many Chinese soldiers compared to American soldiers have been killed in action in the past 20 years. Probably pretty similar numbers.
Who has decided this? Is this what I can't understand is this like Xi, or is this just the genetics have told the Chinese?
That's such a great point.
As a collective,
just trying to relate it to evolution. It's like, well, okay, so you're just saying that spontaneously everybody was doing this because evolution. Like, I'm so confused about how
when he said choose, right? And we got to remember, like the one-child policy was brutal, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about it, like from evolutionary perspective, look, I'm not a geneticist or an evolutionary biologist or anything like that. But what is he talking about? Like choosing which children to have? Like your loins are deciding which ones to produce?
Is this in a Darwinian sense? Yeah.
Like this is a social thing that's going on. Which I think is something that is condemnable. For example, to privilege one gender over another. I mean, that's an awful thing. But to act like this is like evolutionary and it's actually some kind of like genetic warfare to prepare for massive.
As I always understood it, the gender imbalance. I mean, the usual explanation was, infanticide, right? Or at the like that's at the very least, I suppose, abortion after finding out in the ultrasound, what the sex was going to be. Which, again, those seem like conscious choices, not anything that has anything to do with evolution. And it's also like, so putting aside whatever the fuck evolution is supposed to do in this argument, which I'm really confused by. Like, I kind of want, Tucker's not going to ask this, but like, I really want some follow-up questions. Like, okay, wait a second. So evolution, right? You're talking about like genetic variation and natural selection, right? That's what we're talking about here, right? Like, take me through it step by step, how to connect the dots from there to what you're talking about. But even putting aside evolution, is the idea that like individual Chinese families, of whom, there are a lot, we're all in on this conspiracy to try to generate more males so they could have a bigger army, so they could defeat the United States one day.
Yeah. Well, we, us, DEI wokes, or whatever you want to call us, we might dismiss the science.
God knows what I have. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The truth is that this is not the first time Brett has done this. This is a pretty one of his favorite cards to play in his sort of grifter catalog, and this is from years ago. This is my favorite clip of this guy. It's him with a little guy people might know named Richard Dawkins. Himself no slouch in like being an asshole, but Richard, I think, has a little bit better grounding in reality than our boy Brett does. And they start talking about World War II here. And this is, I think, maybe the best example and refutation of Brett Weinstein's brand of charlatanism I've seen.
Very much so, yes.
The Second World War.
Yes.
Right? Even the terminology. You had the fatherland effectively raping Mother Russia. That's even the terminology, right? So what this was a lineage-level phenomenon in which a population went after two other populations, one that was internal to its borders or its near neighbors, and one population that was distant but had a great many resources. But the point is, understood from the perspective of German genes, vile as these behaviors were, they were completely comprehensible from the level of fitness. It was abhorrent and unacceptable, but understandable that Germany should have viewed its Jewish population as a source of resources. If you viewed Jews as non-people, then whatever resources they had could be appropriated for German genes, and likewise, the future of Germany lies in Russia. All of the resources of Russia, and how many million, is it 20 million Russians it took to turn the German war machine around? So what you have are these population against population conflicts. If you view it as group selection, it makes no sense, but if you view them as lineages, it makes a great deal of sense. And the belief structures that caused people to step onto battlefields and fight were clearly comprehensible as adaptations of the lineages in question.
I think nationalism might be an even greater evil than religion. And I'm not sure that it's actually very helpful to talk about it in Darwinian terms. I think it's this might be a case where we do need to defer a little bit to historians and non-biologists and think about it in other ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely wild.
Yeah, no, it's the German genes.
That's really it. That's all you need to show about that guy.
To get like fucking Dawkins that worked up is really special.
Well, I love I'm going to do an irreverent, I'm doing nothing even responding to what you said, which is that, yeah, nationalism is wild, how bad that is, right? And then it's like, okay, I kind of have to address what you just said. Can we not try to look at this in Darwinian terms? Like, can we maybe, like, is there a historian in the house? It's like someone's choking and you're looking for a doctor or something like that.
I mean, that was kind of a point where I did have the little pang of sympathy for Dawkins because, because look, never on this show, but I think you've all had experiences of being on podcasts and the interviewer will like frame a question in a really weird way, but it's like not like a hostile interview. You don't want to turn it into a debate in the moment. And so you just kind of have to figure out how to play it to like sort of like work in there somewhere that you think the framing is crazy.
Yeah.
Exactly. You need something to point to in case people bust you on it later.
So, but what's so funny about this, I have to share this with you. I sent this to you, Matt.
I'm sorry. I do want to dwell for just a second on the German genes because, this is pretty special. Like that, the thing that made the Third Reich commit genocide against the Jewish population and try to conquer Eastern Europe
Natural
was
selection.
genes.
Oh yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, their genes.
Like the genes knew that they needed to do that, and Hitler and the Nazi leadership, they were just like vessels. For this like genetic imperative, which oddly enough sounds a lot like what the Nazis themselves said about what they were doing.
But exactly. It's both like it sounds it really, you can read it in a sinister way, and it also sounds like it's just stupid, like in the way of like you're a freshman and you're applying like the things, the little limited concepts you do know to everything else. Like it's just exactly like this one other thing I know about, and it's like you are overextending.
100%.
No, for sure. I mean, like it's not. I mean, look, to be clear about this, I think Brett Weinstein is an idiot, and I think I like to try to. I think we overuse this word. I like to make an effort not to overextend it, but I do actually think he's probably something of a grifter. But I don't think I don't think he's pro-Nazi. I mean, he's Jewish, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, but I do. I do think it's amazing that like this like dumbass genetic determinism that's like an attempt to make the one thing that he knows some stuff about biology cover everything. Like I think he's sort of back like somehow like a drunk pilot, if you will, right? Like he's like crashed into this place in his argument where he ends up actually sounded remarkably like a Nazi.
Right. It's like Limbaugh trying to do football commentary. And it's like, I can only relate this to politics. So everything's a politics metaphor or something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember that. But yeah, like this is like, you don't think like, I mean, this is like the ultimate, like in cultural essentialism. Cause it's like, I don't know, man, like all of those like German socialists and communists and trade unionists who were killed before anybody else was, they didn't have the German genes.
The lineage, they weren't.
Well, this is like
Hey, he didn't say genes. He said lineage, okay? And he probably wrote an essay about it that was left like on his fucking G2 Mac or whatever. Like,
yeah, if not for the distributed idea suppression complex, that essay would have won like at least one Nobel Prize.
Well, no, like, so on this, like, just saying, like, how, like, when you try to overextend your knowledge into a bunch of other shit, you sound, one, you say insane shit, like what he was just saying about Nazi Germany. But two, you also sort of mimic something that other people who are really dumb do, people who don't know anything about a subject, and then try to extrapolate all sorts of things on it. And I said this to Matt this morning, unrelated, not knowing this what we're going to be talking about tonight. This is from like a comedy, I guess, podcast here in Texas from this show called Chad Prather, and he's interviewing this French guy about, I don't know, being French and why, and how he came to Texas. Anyways, you got to watch this because there's going to be some very similar themes here between what Brett is saying.
For American people to understand how much the World War I affected France back in the day. Quarters of the men alive die in that war. The quarters of men who die are the toughest, like the strongest. So the French blood, the French genetic changed a lot after that, okay? Then goes the World War II, okay? And another part of the toughest guy died. All these tough, patriotic guys died. On the same time, all the refugees from Germany, Italy, Spain, all the communists, all the anarchists came to France to refugee. We lost million and million of toughest conservative men, and we gained million of communist refugees and anarchist refugees. So the population changed.
Sorry, who died?
Awesome.
You know?
It's like you don't want to say, well, actually, a lot of communists died because in World War II, because then you're buying into this sort of like this demented like.
No,
framing.
I mean, it is worth noted, like, though, as far as the premise goes, that an awful lot of French communists died in World War II.
Oh, I mean,
right?
100%. No, are you serious? And also, like, you know, we want to talk about guys who got by. You want to talk about guys that got by during the fucking Nazi occupation of France? You think it was the communists or the fucking conservative?
Yeah,
Conservatives, yeah, I think there's a
No
B word.
job.
we have to-
the staff of people who were closer to this guy's politics than not. And, you know, which, yeah, I mean, with all of its, you know, like they, like for the old, like only time since the French Revolution, they took all of the, used to be like all the money and everything, you know, would always say like fraternité, égalité, you know, liberté. And like they replaced it with something about like faith, family. Like that's the, you know, yeah, that's who was running. That's who was running the French government on behalf of the Nazis. And, you know, pretty famously, there was like a lot of collaboration kind of all throughout French society. But also, my God, like, okay, fuck the premise. Like, just the.
Mhm.
You have,
Well, I mean, more than anything,
like also the. Like, okay, sorry, this
No,
this
no,
is
please.
I'm still trying to process this argument because like I don't know. I mean, it seemed like there were enough like, you know, tough conservative dudes left in France that for them to like do all kinds of war crimes in Algeria to almost overthrow the very conservative president, you know, when he was ready to get out of Algeria. Like, what are you talking about?
No, I mean it is endlessly stupid, and I think more than anything, it's just is because you know I think Brett doesn't want to be seen as a dummy. I think he tries actually very hard to seem the opposite, and he might need to realize that his overextension of his evolutionary theory is starting to get him to sound like some weird ass guy on a no name podcast in Texas. What?
You might be onto something. Look at this is one of the guys who made it out scot free out of World War II. That's an hour there.
Oh man, it's so bad.
That was a French Canadian accent. That's wild. I mean,
I don't know if it was French Canadian.
that's what somebody said in the chat. I have no idea. I haven't heard.
I mean,
an
who
accent
knows
like
what
that.
it was?
I was trying to place it the whole time.
From I did not. I'm just to be completely honest. I did not go and watch the interview with this.
You didn't
man.
subscribe.
I didn't subscribe, but the caption, which I'm going to paraphrase because I closed that tab, but the caption is whatever the hell his name is, Baptiste, whatever, moved to Texas from France, and he has some warnings about what could be coming here if we're not careful. So. That's
which is also like
about, yeah.
I mean, I don't know, like I've got to say, like France right now seems to have an awful lot of right wingers left in it.
Yeah 100%.
Like they keep on having these like elections where the two candidates in the runoff are like the normie conservative and the fascist.
Yeah, I mean it's the most classic thing in the world. This happens I'm sure all across the country, but just where I've lived in the South, guy from wherever the hell they're from in Europe likes where they live in America. Great. You know, I like it here too. And they start telling wild ass stories about where they come from. And it could be like a country with some like very recent difficult times or like a guy from England, but it's always like, I escaped, something terrible. It's like, dude, you're from Essex, Shut the fuck up.
And clearly you should be upset that those guys moved to Texas because that means the supply of labor is greater. So, it's that's going to be bad.
We're going to get all the big, strong guys. We're going to move all the big, strong guys into one zone, and then we'll move all of the Chinese men into the same zone, and we'll just see who...
Is it wild how this is we're just having yellow peril, but it's online now?
100%. It's insane.
Well, this was actually the place, we were talking about Tucker earlier, and like this is, I remember like thinking this was hilarious, like leading up to writing that article, because like there's the sort of, contrarian, left adjacent people who like make their case for Tucker as like kind of a good guy, or is, or you should, I don't know, like him more than his critics or whatever, is so heavily based on the idea that he's anti-war. And there's this clip of Tucker. I mean, we watched on my show that was like literally he's like nodding while one of his guests is saying that it's bad that the U.S. Army is being, I don't know, feminized because they're like gay friendly or whatever now, because we should want the kind of guys to join the army who dream of drinking blood on a throne made of Chinese skulls. It's Jesus. Like this is anti-war.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's funny. You have to have the anti-war thing where it's like, yeah, what I really don't like is how much they're doing wokeness on the military. And,
no, I'm sorry. Anyone who says any of these right-wing people who they start saying is anti-war, you ask them, it's always a very quick turn. It's just like they just want the war to be against a different group. They're like, we're wasting time fighting this war. We should be fighting that war.
China, yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard, Tucker,
100%.
All those guys are the same way.
Yeah, no, all of them, like, I mean, with Tulsi, a lot of times it was like we should be like fighting the war against the radical Islamic extremists. Obama is, can't win and lead us to victory in that war because he won't say that magic combination of words. But like, yeah, all the rest of them, right? It's like, yeah, I mean, like, really, the test is just what do you think about China? Yeah. Like every single time, they're all super hawks about China. Tucker actually said it explicitly. I think that quote, I don't think it was in my article, but I think it was the one Bronco wrote at the same time, where he says like his position, he says the U.S. and Russia should like have a rapprochement, so we could be together against China. Right. That's like,
right. And I always found that fascinating because it's like, they can't even leave that for a follow-up. Right. Like they always have to say, but China or but the border immediately. They can't even they'd make our jobs as people who are trying to guard against, cynical use of that a lot harder if they would just leave that unsaid for at least like a news cycle or something. But they always say and we have to do China or it's because the border's being invaded.
Yeah. And people who say the border thing, I mean, it's not just that they want crueler and more restrictionist immigration policies in the U.S. I mean, if you watched the Republican debates this year, I'm sure you guys have talked about this in this show, but all of those guys, Trump very much included, they want to go to war in Mexico. They very explicitly they want to send drones. They want to send like the American military to like go fight with cartels in Mexico. And I guess they never explicitly say that they'll be like fighting the Mexican army, but like in these scenarios, it's like, it's never quite clear what the Mexican army is doing while the U.S. Army is like bombing and killing people in Mexico.
I had a brainwave this morning. The Mexico stuff and the convoys, not less acute and less maybe bloody than what we're seeing in Israel with regards to the blockades of like the aid trucks, but similar sort of phenomena, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. I mean, this is people. I mean, like you saw this a lot in like the kind of some of the late Obama stuff where you had the wave of unaccompanied minors from like Honduras often, and there were like people who were like harassing the buses of literal children coming from desperate circumstances. And it's like, my God, like whatever you thought, should have happened, or, should be allowed to stay or whatever. It's like, just as a person, how much has to be wrong with you to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I'm telling you, this shit's accelerating in a pretty, worrying, way. So I think, unless you have any opposition, it might be a good time to sort of look to questions and calls right quick.
Okay.
Matt, I empower you to the full ability as our czar, our Stalinist czar here, to be very strict about time and recounts.
Let's
while
do
you're
yeah. You do some.
we'll just say while you're pulling them, I just want to say to folks who have joined us, to our patrons, thank you so much for supporting the show, patrons. I hope you all don't mind that we sort of left the metaphorical screen
Barn
door
door
open.
open.
Screen door open. We have a few friends joining us today on the porch. We are going to be taking calls and questions from patrons right now. If you have jumped in on this open bonus episode, and you like what you hear, you like the program, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/leftreckoning. We do post games after every main show each week. We do a Sunday bonus episode. Support really helps us continue to grow and have good conversations like this. So please consider doing it at patreon.com/leftreckoning. But without further ado, let's go.
I saw there was somebody in the chat who said, Ben, where do you teach now?
Yeah.
So just for the record, that's Rutgers online and a small college in Burbank in person. That's Woodbury. But I do want to do another like online class on my Patreon.
You did one on Capital, right?
Yeah, I did that. Like that wrapped up like a while ago. It was like a year or two ago, and I feel like it's probably about time to do that again.
How many years have you been teaching, Ben?
Jesus, several more than David Griscom has been a high school graduate.
Okay, so yeah, I think you definitely. I'm trying to look when Brett Weinstein started teaching.
We're going to compare resumes over here.
If you have because he gets a lot of.
I probably spent more time doing that than Brett did, because I mean he doesn't seem, he seems like he was a reasonably young guy when all that happened.
Yeah. I think you got him by actually like a few years at least, but I can't tell by his Wikipedia because it's too much covered in bullshit.
What does it at least say when he got his PhD?
He got his thesis 2009.
2009. Okay. So yeah, I mean, considering that he's been out of the class for like most of the time since then, yeah, I've got a bit.
Yeah, pretty soon no one's going to remember that he ever was a teacher, and he's just going to be the genes are marching amongst us and explain everything. Do genetics explain the MTA? More with Brett Weinstein. Do you want to do some discords? I'm going to do 4 calls.
Cool.
The 4 shortest calls, the 4 briefest calls. So here is the first one. If you're ready for it.
Hey boys, this is Steve from Tokyo checking in. I just wanted to let you know about some big news out of Japan. The Itochu Corporation has just cut off ties with Elbit Systems, the Israeli weapons distributor. I believe that's the company in the UK where the protesters went on the roof and got arrested. Yep. But big corporation in Japan had a contract with them, and we're a big target for our protests here in Tokyo. We're kind of, I don't think harassing is the right word, but protesting outside their office on a Friday night as the employees were leaving to let them know that their company was supporting genocide. Itochu has cut off relations with Elbit Systems. So big victory in Japan. Just wanted to throw you guys that update real quick.
Hell yeah.
Keep up the good work.
There's a lot of good news in that call. First, that action, and also that we have a caller from Tokyo. Thanks for the call.
Thank you so much for the call. Yeah, that's great. I love seeing mobilization in Japan because I feel like we don't get as much.
We don't
hear as much about it. Yeah.
I want to read more about. There's a few books. Yeah, we've talked about this a few times.
I know. Every time our friend calls in from Tokyo, we talk about how we want to do a big Japan episode. We gotta get a good expert on. Anyway,
here's a next call here.
Hey guys, it's Dave from Jamaica again.
Dave.
So quickly into the comedy topic. So I don't know whether it's with Joe Rogan or Dave Chappelle, but ever since people get their brains hooked up with any sort of critique, at least with these comedians. They can't seem to get over it. And well, at least with Dave Chappelle, because I used to be a Dave Chappelle fan. But ever since he became kind of turfy or anti-trans, his comedy has suffered tremendously because all he does is cry about it. He does, and relying on his past work, he's able to kind of cruise on it. But his bits are become so hacky now. But I don't know. I think a lot, and I think Joe Rogan amplifies this, where they view, it's almost like they view being a comedian as a protected class, like a religion or a racism. It's very disturbing, but yeah, I want jokes to be funny again. Later.
The irony about all this is that it's the right wing that's doing this, but I'm sorry, the left is 100% who created this fantasy of the lone comedian
Totally.
being
It's a
the
Bush
truth
era
teller
thing.
in society. It is a liberal thing
Yeah.
that now
Well,
is
this
having
is
a
the-
right
this
wing
is the first-
version of it.
Totally, yeah. This is the first chapter of Canceling Comedians While the World Burns, called Letty Bruce Can't Save Us, and it's basically entirely about this point that I think a lot of the sort of excessive focus all around, right, on what's going on with comedians who I actually just think aren't that important one way or the other.
Yeah.
Right? Like
No, it's like Joe Biden cares about what's on Morning Joe because that's what he watches. Like comedians were important for us or from our generation. I mean, I think like from a political conscious standpoint, like David Cross or Patton Oswalt, they had good liberal ideas in their stand-up sets that were funny and they felt transgressive in a way. But like, yeah, I mean what good did that do? I don't know.
it doesn't do anything. I mean, this is the whole thing. Like what I talked about in that chapter, that like I think a lot of liberals are very like persistently vulnerable to this delusion that it's going to do something. Like when John Oliver did that bit on his show during the 2016 election about how like Donald Trump, I mean, it was actually sort of also weirdly xenophobic, but about how like Donald Trump's like grandfather, whatever his surname had been Drumpf. And like, Libs just got so excited about that, right? This is like really going to like get him, right?
Because we did racism against him.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, but it's like, it doesn't do anything. Like the idea that comedians are, I mean, and I'm saying all this, by the way, like I love stand-up comedy. Like I'll go to stand-up shows. I have, I'm not, like as a form of entertainment, like I really enjoy it a lot. Right. But, in fact, everybody whose name has been mentioned so far in this discussion, except for Joe Rogan, who was never good stand-up. I think he's much better being a podcaster than he ever was being a stand-up comedian. But, other than that, right, those were all people whose comedy I enjoyed a lot, right? I liked Cross and Oswald.
With Chappelle,
I do have I will say I didn't listen to the most recent Chappelle album, right? So I can't comment on that. But the one before that, I think, right? Maybe there was another one in between, but I think the last one I listened to, I think it was the one before that, right? I still thought was funny, but I don't, I just think that like. I think what David said is just exactly right. Like this, that this was all over the place in the Bush era among liberals, and now I wish I remembered what magazine it was. It was like some. It might have been like Unheard or something, but I feel like it might have even been something more right coded than that. But like I remember seeing this article that was like in some right wing or right wingish magazine, like just like last week, maybe, that was literally like, comedian, maybe comedians can save us or something was
That's awesome.
exactly.
Yeah, no, maybe they'll just run oh man, who's even a good right?
Maybe Theo Vaughn's gonna institute fascism in America.
I don't want to. It sucks. His stuff sucks so much, but like I actually like him, so like I don't want to throw him. But
Yeah.
He's
but it's
he's
like
in the
all
bad
things
stuff
America,
now.
yeah.
He's swimming.
Which is also the
He's swimming
thing,
in
like-
he's swimming in the swamp with those boys, big time.
You know, I mean, even if I like, you know, Dave Chappelle's comedy better than, you know, my friend Dave from Jamaica, or my friend Matt Leck, perhaps, I have where I will agree with Dave from Jamaica is the thing about jokes being funny again, because this is also a point I make in that chapter, that Lady Bruce Can't Save Us chapter, that culture war in general is awful
Yeah.
for comedy.
Yeah.
Because whether it's in that sort of Hannah Gatsby, just sort of trying to say things that are very correct, so everybody will do clapter, or whether it's in the anti-woke version, because even people who I think are like Bill Burr, like that's somebody I actually think is very funny,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like
Easy.
I like him a lot, but so like the example I use, because it's a little dated now, but I mean it was recent at the time that I was writing, right? Was his album Paper Tiger, which I actually think is a really good stand-up album. But like to get to the good stuff, and I feel like I've had this experience with so many stand-up albums, it's like to get to the funny part, you have to like wade through an initial 10 minutes of nobody can tell a joke anymore, which is just not that funny.
Yeah, no,
Like-
I 100% agree. Like with Chappelle specifically, I think Chappelle is still like world class tier of his own in terms of crafting a joke. In terms of crafting a set, it's like there's only so much time you have, and how many fucking consecutive sets are you going to have to do this on? And so many other comedians that are way worse than Dave Chappelle are also fixated on it. Comedians I do like. There's only a couple that I've felt have even treated this with any sort of like interest, even like where I agree with them about like it generally, like or not, like nobody's graduated to the point they're doing the jokes they supposedly can't do, right? Like it's just complaining about not being able to do them still, and
which is just innately not funny. I mean, you should
Exactly.
like I always think like of Norm Macdonald, who it's hard to be sure, right? Because like obviously there's so many layers of fucking around every time he like opened his mouth about any of this stuff. But like I actually think may have actually genuinely like been a conservative in his politics.
I agree.
They have a but whatever, right? Like
he's hilarious, one of the funniest guys ever.
one of the funniest guys who's ever done this, and he's also a good model, right? Because can you imagine
Oh my
Norm
god.
Macdonald doing a nobody can tell a joke anymore thing? Like if he admitted to having any idea how anybody was receiving any joke he did, it would ruin the effect. And he was like too talented a performer to do that.
Yeah. Well, and this is why I have been like increasing my appreciation of Cat Williams, because I also feel like he's directly addressing, he's like, stop complaining about that shit, and I appreciate that. But even more, his comedy is so fucking funny, and he hasn't changed at all with this whole conversation going on.
Yeah, right. And I mean, it's like clearly, it's like, come on, it's like not like Cat Williams was ever, unless he's really changed since the last Cat Williams set I saw. It's not like that's a guy who's worried about telling offensive jokes.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a few discourse we got to jump to, and I know we have a couple calls, so I'm just going to sprinkle a few of these in here. I will just say on the Norm Macdonald point, though, really fast, is Norm Macdonald has one of his best on his like show that he did. One of the best ones ever is he did one with Billy Joe Shaver, who's one of my favorite country artists of all time. And if you haven't seen it, once this is over, you should definitely watch it. It's next level. But to start,
sorry, I want one more stand-up comedy point. Cha says Daniel Tosh is fucking hilarious right now. That's interesting. I haven't heard of Tosh in a while. I will say I've seen Tosh twice in person, and it was very funny the first time, and it was almost word for word identical the second time I saw him a year later.
That's really sick. That's good. I mean, that's just because you live in the big city, though, right, Matt? You see,
I had to drive all the way to Minneapolis to see both of those, and the second time.
Oh, this is before you're new. I thought you were just like going down to Manhattan.
Oh no, this is when I was living in Fargo, so I drove all the way to Minneapolis.
Oh well, that sucks then. That's mean. Yeah, he should have done.
Come on,
he
man.
should have.
People like if you're gonna go to like Minneapolis twice, like you gotta give people something new the second
You
time.
gotta do something for your
like
boy
you don't
Matt.
think it's
Sit
the
in
same
front
people,
row.
Daniel? Yeah, you think you have that many fans out here, bro? Come on.
So we have a few questions in here. I was thinking maybe to start. There's one specifically for about your Daniel talk.
Yeah, fair.
This is one specifically for you, Ben, from Nozaku, who says, does Ben have any advice for new teachers, broadly or in regard to union participation and engagement?
Ooh, well, yeah, okay. So he says new teachers, and I do think the devil's a little the details about, what that means exactly, right?
Mm.
Like, so I don't, I'm not gonna sit here and tell anybody that they should be like cavalier about, their job. But I will say this much, right? That, at Rutgers, that I've, had, I've worked on and off for, since, for like 7 years or so, right? Like I was off for a couple of those, right? As an adjunct there. And that's, the least, secure your job can possibly be in any sort of teaching position. In fact, less secure in some ways than I think being like a, untenured public school teacher. Because like you can always just say like, or at least in principle, right? You could always just say, oh, sorry, we didn't have anything for you this semester. And nevertheless, right? I mean, last year we went on strike and won a bunch of stuff. And in fact, it's been, there's still, job security and a lot of other things are still very much works in progress, but there are some protections now. There are way more than there were before the strike. And so, it's like, look, if you're the whole point of organizing is that you have strength in numbers, right? So, I think that, if you're obviously the best judge of how safe you are in your, kind of particular environment, right? I'm not going to, I don't know, right? But I think that I think it's very, it's very hard to fire everybody, when it comes to it, and like oftentimes you can get more than you think you will, right? Under those circumstances. And, like if you're, and again, it's so like at that level of abstraction, I don't know if the union involvement is like, we're talking about something that has been unionized forever. And it's just a matter of like how involved to be in the union that's already up and running, or, or whether you're trying to get one going or whatever. So, but like, I guess my just general pep talk would be that like, honestly, people, most administrators are just kind of trying to get through the stuff at a day-to-day, level and say, and put out fires and, don't be stupid, but I mean, you'd be surprised how much you can get.
I think it's good advice. Matt, do you want to play the other calls or should I do more Discord?
Do one more Discord and I'll pull up I'll choose the last call here.
Cool. From the hat. I'll do this one quick. Joe Snuffy says, I picked up 2 pork shoulders for $1.49 a pound. So about 25 pounds of meat for $30. Hell yeah. I'm going to Dutch oven them. I think that might mean something else to some folks.
It's unfortunate if that actually means something practical.
I think it does. I'm going to cook them in the Dutch oven. But the internet seems split over whether I should inject the meat with apple cider vinegar, spritz it periodically with the same, or just trust my dry rope. Please share your wisdom.
He's also only euphemisms to me now.
Please share your wisdom as the most prominent grill master within the United States left. Well, I will say, for not grilling, we're not chilling. I don't know. I mean, you're cooking in the pot. I mean, I'll just tell you, in theory, I'll give some advice. Injecting versus spritzing versus dry rub. I don't think you should be injecting anything into meat that's not fat or flavor. So I wouldn't just put vinegar into meat. Just saying.
Hear that, Lance Armstrong? Sorry, go ahead.
I'm a Lance Armstrong defender over here.
I know you are. Yeah.
You can get me started on my thing. I think if you were putting it on a smoker, I would say you should be spritzing it. But if you're putting it in a pot, I think that opening up the pot every hour or so to spritz it is going to be counterproductive, because every time you open up the pot, you're going to get rid of all the steam and liquid and humidity in there. So I would trust your rub if you're just cooking it in a pot. But you should throw it on the grill if you got that much meat, man. And if you want to smoke a couple pork butts, you do it 225. And I would probably go for 12 hours. See where it is after that on that. It'd take a long time, 25 pounds. But enjoy.
This is good. This is funny. Last night on my show, when I had Jason Miles on for the opening segment, and he was recounting like learning stuff about my cooking habits from when we were neighbors in Mexico, and I started talking about making tortillas and stuff, and like we ended up talking about it for like 5 minutes. I was like, you know what, fuck it, maybe we should just make this a cooking show. Right? I'm done talking about politics all the time.
It would be smart, honestly, for all of us to get into like a separate channel of like a woodworking, like Sam Sneeder should do a woodworking, but you just constantly mention Medicare, or like get into your parallel interests, and it's interesting to see the right try to do that as well. Like there's a Daily Wire sports show. I don't know if you guys knew that, but
no one watches that though. I mean, that's so.
I know,
that's
of course,
just
yeah.
so bad. That's just so bad. I mean, yeah, it is very funny.
It's the Ben Sports Shapiro Network.
Oh, actually, like on that Super Bowl. Who's our Super Bowl picks here?
I don't know, man. I'm just too depressed.
About the Lions.
I'm going for Team Fauci. Of course, everyone knows who that is. Without me saying anything more, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, because of course, Travis Kelce is most commonly known as the guy from the Pfizer commercials, and not like a very decorated tight end in the National Football.
I know we've talked about this enough on this program, and I'm sure, Ben, you've seen this, but like watching the right wing act like fucking Travis Kelce. He came out like nobody would have known who this guy was if it wasn't for Taylor Swift and Joe Biden. Apparently, it's like one
Sorry.
of the. Yeah.
I have big news.
What?
I got followed by Arian Foster today.
Oh shit, dude! Congrats.
Yeah. Arian Foster, running back, former of the Houston Texans, and he's a content producer now. So he's been on actually Emma's sports show before. But yeah, it was a nice little notification. I'll be honest, just because this is a post game, I'm happier about that one than the AOC one now.
Yeah, let's do something.
Yeah, the one I was most excited about years ago was John Cusack. But then
hell yeah! Did he unfollow?
He unfollowed me.
Damn.
Actually, he unfollowed me twice. Because the first time he unfollowed me, and I'm not like John Cusack. Somebody I really enjoy as an actor. I was very excited, but like as far as I can tell, he's kind of he's like a normie lib, but he like Bernie, right? So it's like,
hey, he's good on Palestine.
Yeah, that's true. But the first time he unfollowed me, I actually it's pretty bad, but it was just too funny not to. I tweeted, "Hey, I see at John Cusack unfollowed me. I wonder if there's anything I can do to get him back." And I had the picture of him holding up the boombox. And he actually refollowed me after that.
That's really good.
He eventually unfollowed me again, but yeah, I don't know. I was also just thinking that like the process David's describing about grilling, like I've never actually tried to do that. And, it sounds very, like Like, it sounds involved, but it also sounds very relaxing.
Oh, dude,
like
it's the best. I get sad when I'm barbecuing for a while. Like, I almost get sad when it's when it's done. Like, the whole point of it is obviously to cook something. But it's like I'm sitting out there for like 8 hours. I'm like poking the fire. I mean, don't get me wrong. Y'all both know me. Y'all both know me outside of this. Like, I wouldn't say I necessarily struggle socially, but I like to have a thing, at a party to do.
A crutch.
So it's like I can always, and it's so like. I have barbecues at my place all the time. It's like, it's so awesome. Because if you ever just need to, like, I'm sort of done. Even if you're just like bored of whatever's happening in the conversation, like, oh, actually, I got to go fuck with the fire a little bit. And
I'm convinced that's half the reason people smoke cigarettes. That's the only reason I ever smoke.
Oh, 100. I used the same thing with that too.
Yeah.
No, I always think I think I've told you guys this before, probably not on air, but like I've had, but I mean I still remember in the summer of 2020, one of the last TMBS episodes before Michael died was the one with Stav, and I was listening to it like right after it came out. I was like going for a run I was back in East Lansing at that point. And I just remember there was this point where Stav said in the episode that he had this like daily routine. And I don't remember what time it was, right? Whether it was like 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever. But he was like, whatever isn't done at that point in the day, just waits till the next day. That's the absolute cutoff point. And after that, I remember he says he grills, gets high, and watches The Sopranos. And I just had this like stab, like this physical stab of jealousy. It's like, holy shit, how do I rearrange my life, so I can do that?
That's a tremendous amount of discipline to be able to do that. Like I could never do that.
It's good. I mean, that's definitely, I think that's the way to live. I've learned a lot from him. All right, should we pop in a couple more of these?
Yeah, last call here of the evening. Here we go, another call from Cali.
Hey guys, it's Brendan from San Diego. Tornado, tsunami, hurricane, San Diego. And I just wanted to bring up that one thing that Joe Rogan said when he's complaining about socialism. He said he briefly mentioned how he's dismissed the low IQ people's decisions. They're going to just be spoiled. They're going to ask for handouts or whatever. And that was one of the most like honestly sickening things I've heard him say. The fact that this like piece of shit like can just call everyone else or a bunch of people just like their brains are malfunctioning and they are like less people. I also just wanted to share a little dunk on IQ that I just came across. So there was this, the co-founder of the Transistor, William Shockley, who was a terrible eugenicist. And he was always going on about IQ and stuff. But his biographers said this about him. When Terman first used the IQ test to select a sample of child geniuses, he unknowingly excluded a special child whose IQ did not make the grade. Yet a few decades later, that talent received the Nobel Prize in Physics. William Shockley, the co-creator of the Transistor. Ironically, not one of the more than 1,500 children who qualified according to his IQ criterion received so high an honor as adults. Anyway, so just wanted to share that with you guys later.
Yeah, I feel like Shockley might get a treatment by... what's his name? The science mismeasure of man, Gould, Stephen Jay Gould, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I read that, but that sounds right. I don't know. I was just thinking in there, it's so funny. Like, this is a very unoriginal observation about Joe Rogan, but like, if you just think about the different conversations he's had over the years and what he's agreed to, right? Like, and at different times. Like, I
remember one about the border during Trump where he's like, if you don't agree that I can't remember what it was, like kids.
No, I know exactly the segment that you're talking about. Right? He was wearing this, like tie-dye shirt, and he goes on this rant about how like the Trump border child separation policy at the border was like evil and inhuman, and you're not on Team Human.
If you're on the team.
Yeah. No, that was definitely Rogan at his best, and it wraps up with this thing where he's like praising AOC, and he's like, "Oh, I probably agree with her about the law, I agree with her about healthcare."
Yeah,
and it's like, even I don't know. I mean, it's been, I guess, about 2 years since I was on Rogan, and I had when I was on, one of the first things, like in that first like 2 minutes, right? When he says like, it's the most watched thing in the history of my channel, which is none of it translated to subscriptions or anything.
Yeah, of course.
But it's like 1.1 million views. It's this short of Joe Rogan asking me if I'm a democratic socialist or a straight up socialist, and in the course of that answer,
I like the premise of that question. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I love. Yes. Like that's why it's right. But
Joe's anxiety.
But in the and I gave this answer where I was like, I think democracy is good, but like here's why capitalism is bad, and I don't. But like in the course of the answer, I said that I think inequalities are unjust if they're outside of the control of the people who get the short end of the stick, and he agreed with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's like, well, hold on, right? Like if you really agree with that, then what's like, how can you possibly like have these positions, right? That's not, I really, and this is the thing that makes it such a shame that like he always had like a super right-wing tilted guest list, but it's like, probably gone much more so in the last couple of years. I don't know when the last time like Kyle Kalinske was on or anything like that.
Yeah.
But that like, cause it's like, man, it'd be really nice if once every 10 episodes, somebody could come back and be like, yeah, but like, how about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It would have been nice if like Michael, especially because Michael had, when he was on, I forget what this Libertarians podcast was. It was like some like knowledge jujitsu or some shit like that. I can't. But he's on with some Libertarians. What?
I might not have seen this one. Yeah,
it was. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't like Brian Callen. No, not Brian Callen. Some other guy. I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, but they're talking about like, well, don't you like to be competitive? Like, and he's like, yeah, I like to compete, but like, that certain people have to compete just to survive and not be hungry or to keep a shelter of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the competition, right? Like, and you can pretty much get anybody. I mean, Rawls, like that's basically John Rawls, right? Like you can get most people to agree with that kind of thing that, actually using fear of not having food to eat for your fucking kids. That's not really one thing we want to throw into the, oh, just having a fun competition over here, guys. That's not part of the competition.
No, totally. I think Michael would have absolutely killed in that. Which it's one of whatever. I don't want to be.
What did Rogan call him?
What's that?
Remember when
Michael?
Oh, Mike. What was the last name?
Well, that's
Roberts.
Roberts.
Yeah. Which to be fair, he did, like I think somebody pointed out to me, actually did apologize, and I do think based on the brief conversation we had on air about Michael, I don't think he was just making it up to like as a gesture to me or whatever. Like I think he had watched some clips since.
I bet he had.
He seemed to know more than he did back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is one of the, it's one of the things, whatever. There's a lot of stuff that would have been really good that would have happened, might have happened, but anyway, I don't want to get us off.
So we have to watch Joe Rogan do this face at his guests as he talks about immigration.
Yeah, the new joke face that he's doing is really rough. Yeah, if anything, it got Michael on to help him out with his impressions. That needs some work. Yeah, let's grab this last one here.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Kowalski from Nebraska, folks. You know him. He's going insane out there in the fields. And before the children get him, we'll listen to another one of his messages here.
Hey, it is Kowalski from Nebraska. So I don't want to alarm too many people, but I'm going to alarm a few people. So today it got up to about 55 degrees. Not unusual for that to happen once or twice in February. But the first week of February and a full week of weather in the mid to upper 40s to 50s, this is outrageous. Not only that, a lot of the clover's turning green, the rye is turning green, and little buds are starting to form on the trees. This shit ain't supposed to happen for another 6 weeks minimum. So I don't know who these climate deniers are anymore, but I'm pretty sure all you need to do is just, go step outside into the raging inferno, because it is the dead of winter. It's supposed to be freezing. There's supposed to be snow. There's not supposed to be green grass starting to show up, at least not in central Nebraska. So I think it's safe to say this is the end. And it's been a blast, getting to listen to you guys. Let's enjoy the cicadas when it hits 115 degrees and 100% humidity this summer, because I understand California is just drowning in water. So, it'll just become a giant pressure cooker. Wonderful election season that's going to be. All right. Talk to you later.
Yeah, nothing like a bit of agricultural doomerism to finish the show off, folks. Well, I think Dave. Oh, there he is. Hey, David.
Sorry.
We have given you a jumbo-sized
I think
free
so. Yeah.
post game. Ben, thank you so much for being with the. We will go check out that. I forgot I was on that very first episode of Give Them Argument.
Yep. Not only were you on the first episode, you were the first guest in the first episode.
Yeah.
Well, also, don't be rude. Ben Burgis, please tell us about where people can find more of your stuff.
Yeah. I was also the conversely. I was the very first Left Reckoning patron when I signed up. It was
that's right.
Yeah, he beat my mom.
Just barely, but yeah. Where can people find it? So mostly two places. Give Them an Argument and Jacobin. So Give Them an Argument is live every Monday and Thursday night. That's 8 Eastern, which is beautiful because now that I live on the West Coast, that means I'm actually done with the show at like a sane time of the night. And I'm in Jacobin.com every week, and in the Daily Beast less often than that, but like it's try to sneak in some hard truths for the normie libs.
Any debate breakdowns coming up or recently?
Yeah. So we've been on Monday we do the show that's like this show. We have guests on, do the post game, whole deal. But then on Thursday nights we do the Thursday night debate breakdowns. And we've kind of been on it, we do a mixture of things for them where some of them are like very contemporary and and pretty lowbrow, and some of them are like old firing line episodes of Christopher Hitchens debates or whatever. And we've kind of been on a kick where we've been doing a lot of the first category lately. So I think we're actually going to go. We're going to do a wild swing in the other direction for Thursday. And Rob Larson and I are going to watch John Kenneth Galbraith argue with William F. Buckley.
Oh, hell yeah.
Right on. Yeah, good old Buckley.
Yeah.
That sounds sick. Well, as everybody knows, when you see Ben's byline pop up on the Jacobin magazine, you should definitely be clicking and reading his stuff, as well as checking out Give Them an Argument. Thank you so much, Ben, for hanging out with us. Everybody who joined us for this free and open post game, thank you for hanging out. If you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/leftreckoning. You'll get access to all future post games as well as our Sunday bonus episode. You can also buy a cool hat like Matt Leck has at our website, leftreckoning.com/store. We have our Fence Cutters hoodie, which is very warm, as Matt. How do you say it? I can't do a good Matt Leck. How do you say warm?
Warm.
You say worm.
Warm.
It's very warm. If you want to stay warm this winter, which I guess is going to be very short, according to Kowalski. And the whatever the platypus. What do they do in Pennsylvania? I forget.
The platypus.
The little critter. Who's the critter that they pull out? It's not a hedgehog.
Groundhog?
What is it? The groundhog.
Yeah, we all remember that classic movie Platypus.
I'm just thinking. too much like inner left argument.
Groundhog Day is that?
Fucking
Hey, is it the,
platypus society? Anyway,
Groundhog's Day. Sorry, I got a joke, Jake. Groundhog's Day, is it the Democrats acting like the Republicans aren't sincere about policy?
sorry.
On that note, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We're gonna go. Take care. See you soon.
Peace.